Kemi has lost another one.
The Daily Tea speaks to Reform's latest recruit, Andrew Rosindell, who was in the Tories for 25 years before jumping ship.
And now I'm backing Nigel Farage to be our next Prime Minister because we need to start putting Britain first and he's the man to do it. There's only so much I can put up with, and I think I've been patient, and I've just basically this weekend I thought after Robert, after Chagos and other issues as well where we're just too weak, not conservative really in the way we've approached things, and we've caused a lot of this mess in 14 years. You know, we didn't do the things we should have done, immigration, net zero, the woke agenda, we sucked it all up. We actually need a government that's going to be patriotic, stand up for Britain and actually inspire the British people again, and I think Nigel's the man to do it.
Andrew, of all the defections reform, yours to me feels the most like a raven leaving the tower, because you are Mr. Conservative. I'm old enough to remember when you were elected for Romford 25 years ago, 2001, and you campaigned that year with Margaret Thatcher, and you campaigned with your staffy, who was called Spike, is that right?
Indeed.
Good
Who
memory,
used to,
Tim.
I actually, I didn't just look this up, I remember it.
Wow.
Who wore a Union Jack coat. So this is why I say, given how conservative you are, this really does feel like a big win for reform. And is it difficult for you to walk away from your party?
Tim, I joined the Conservative Party at 14 in Romford. So I've been a member 45 years. I've been an MP 25 years. Of course it's hard. Of course I feel sad. Of course I had grave doubts as to really did I want to do this. But ultimately I always think to myself, why did I get involved in politics? I never woke up one morning and thought, oh, I want to be an MP or I want to be in government. I just believed in this country. I was deeply patriotic ever since I was at school. And so when Margaret Thatcher came along, I saw somebody that inspired me as a teenager. And so I joined the party. I believed in her. I believed that she stood up for Britain. And that's why I got involved. So I think today, would I join the Conservative Party today if I was 14, or would I join Reform? And I think to myself, Reform actually stands for what Margaret Thatcher stood for, standing up for your country, smaller state, against woke political correctness. She wouldn't be going along with so much of what the Conservative Party allowed in those 14 years. And the calamity of what we've got today with this dreadful anti-British Labour government, we need to get them out. And I've called for months for some kind of coming together of the right. Kemi clearly has rejected those calls, and
Well,
instead,
so has Farage.
Nigel has as well. But the difference is, Camilla, we caused it. Our 14 years of failure caused this. Reform would not exist if we'd been Conservative in office, if we'd seriously been proper Conservatives and done radical things to put the country in a better place. We failed. We didn't do it. So the next election, I firmly believe, is going to be make or break for this country. We need to get Labour out, or, God forbid, some sort of left-wing, progressive, green, liberal, SNP, Labour alliance. So I've argued, as you know, Camilla, for the two parties to start talking. I went to see Robert Jenrick in September. I saw Kemi privately in October. I pleaded with them both to speak to Nigel. I said to them both, talk to Nigel. Our country's more important than any political party. Robert said, well, OK, I actually gave Robert Nigel's mobile number, and Robert said, I'll talk to Nigel. Kemi said, no, I don't talk to him. She was quite negative about any type of... But I said, please, because actually, after the next election, we may have to work together. We may have to work before the election for the good of the country. Ever since then, I've been calling for us to try to come together. It's been rejected. The latest Chagos betrayal, the way Robert was thrown under a bus last week, I was very, very upset about that.
You say that Robert Jenrick was thrown under a bus last week. I mean, in a way, he had been lining up at the bus stop for that bus for months, right? He had been lining up since September, according to Tim Montgomery, who has helped to smooth his exit from the Tories into Reform. And secondly, why the timing? I would imagine you are mindful of Nigel Farage standing up last Thursday as he pulls Jenrick like a rabbit from his magician's hat and says, May the 7th is the deadline. If you're defecting, do it now. So at what point over this weekend do you decide, right, that's it? Because I understand you were campaigning with Tory activists on Saturday morning.
Yes, I was. And all my Tory activists are also people that believe in what reform stands for. And that's the problem. You've got two parties now, certainly in my constituency, where everybody is conservative with a small c. And that's the basic problem we've got there. The right is divided. So on to your question. So I was in the chamber when the news came through that Robert had been sacked and that he'd been actually thrown out the party. Now, someone who has been by far the best shadow cabinet minister and the most active and energetic and the person that's articulated, I think, real conservative values in the last 18 months since the election. To discard someone like that so easily, I said, why didn't Kemi have him in? Why didn't she see him herself? Why didn't she plead with him to stay? He's needed. We need Robert in the party.
She said she did.
The chief whip
and there was
apparently
nothing,
phoned him.
Well, hang on. She says, because I interviewed her on Friday night, and it went in the Sunday Telegraph, that she did reach out to him and she did have meetings with him and she did ask him, Robert Jenrick, what is it you want? But ultimately she concluded what he wanted was her job and he couldn't have it, so he jumped ship. So it's wrong to suggest that she and others didn't try and keep Robert Jenrick in the party before they discovered his planned defection speech.
But, and you can, we'll bring you in on this discussion in a moment, Andrew, but Jenrick, but what Andrew is saying is that he has left because of the way she handled Rob.
I get that.
So even if she had to do what she did, perhaps something about the way she went about doing it has actually encouraged more conservatives to think about leaving.
I've got it. And then the counter-narrative to that is, just because we're playing devil's advocate here, she says, well, what was I expected to do once I'd discovered the defection speech? Was I supposed to, quotes, wait until he stabbed me in the face? Andrew.
So if you know someone is going to do something you don't want them to do, but it's a good person you care about and you need, you don't chuck them under a bus. You plead with them. You try and persuade them. You talk to them. The first thing you do is to phone them personally. You don't do it via a third party. In any walk of life, I think you would do that. And I just disappointed the way it happened. Now, ultimately, if Robert was going to go to reform, it should have been treated by the party as something that they were sorrowful about. But they didn't. And I'm afraid the party's done it to me. You know, they put a most appalling statement they put up, which I'm really upset about, because I don't run down any of my former colleagues. I've only ever said good things about Kemi. She's really tried hard. She's done a lot of good things. She has moved the party in a better direction. I've never said anything negative about my friends and colleagues in the Conservative Party. But I have enough, really, about all what's going on. We're not really changing in the radical way we need to change. And the thing for me, Camilla, and you know this, I've always been championing the overseas territories, and the idea of giving away British sovereignty of any of the King's islands, I find appalling, and denying self-determination of the Shigosian people. But that's our policy in government. We started this whole thing. Now, Labour's carried on with it and made it far worse. But we should have repudiated that entire policy. And as a Shadow Minister for Foreign Affairs, I argued in the Shadow Foreign Affairs team that we should repudiate that policy. We should offer the Shigosians self-determination as we do to Gibraltar and Falklands and all the other overseas territories. But we still didn't make that our policy. And then the House of Lords, they don't try and kill the bill at the third reading vote, which they could have done. And I had so many peers onto me, Conservative peers, disgusted that they were told on high to let that third reading go through. Had that third reading been voted down, the bill could have been stopped in its tracks, and it certainly would have given the government a huge headache. But we didn't do it. Now, if the Conservative Party can't pull all the stops out to rescue British territory and stand up for the self-determination of British people, what's conservative about our party anymore? So I can't justify that, having spent 25 years campaigning for the Chagos Islands to stay British and for the Shigosian people to be given self-determination. So there's only so much I can put up with, and I think I've been patient, and I've just basically this weekend I thought, after Robert, after Chagos and other issues as well, where we're just too weak not conservative really in the way we've approached things, and we've caused a lot of this mess in 14 years. We didn't do the things we should have done: immigration, net zero, the woke agenda. We sucked it all up. We actually need a government that's going to be patriotic, stand up for Britain, and actually inspire the British people again. And I think Nigel's the man to do it.
Did Nigel phone you over the weekend then to seal the deal?
Yes. Well, there was no deal before, Camilla. You see, I want to make this clear.
Yeah.
Nigel and I are friends. 25 years I've known him. I knew him before anyone else in Parliament. In fact, I was the first person to take Nigel into Parliament and show him round. He was a brand new MEP. He was UKIP, and he brought a petition to give me about the weights and measures with a butcher from Hornchurch. Can you believe?
Vintage.
And he came and we had a cup of tea in the Pewdry room, and I showed him the chain. Never been in there before. And ever since then, we've been on good terms. We've kept in touch. When I was ill years back, he wrote me a lovely letter, and we've always been friends. So yes, since he became an MP, we've met, we've had lunch, we've chatted, we've had a laugh, as you do with Nigel. He's a great guy to be with. And yes, he knows my politics and his are pretty much the same. And of course, we said, I could join Reform. He's talked about it, but I've never said I would. He knows I'm a committed Conservative and a committed Margaret Thatcher supporter, just as you've said. So, it was hard, but out of the blue, he phoned me Saturday night and he said, look, come on, you've got to make up your mind. You can't be sitting around. What are you going to do here? And after the way Robert was treated, I thought to myself, well, I don't want to be in that position. It's better I make a clear decision now. I consulted a few very close friends on Sunday. This is how late it was. It wasn't till Sunday afternoon that I spoke to close friends. And they said, Andrew, you've just got to decide what you're doing. And I thought, well, I'm going to go with my heart. I'm going to do what I think is right for the country, for Britain, but also for Romford, because I know my constituents will be almost overwhelmingly supportive of making this decision because they've been telling me to do it.
Well, if that's the case, have a by-election.
So the only election I'm worried about is not distracting ourselves with multiple by-elections at great cost. The general election in 2 to 3 years' time is what we should all be focusing on. By-elections would be a total distraction. What matters now is planning to prevent the calamity of a progressive left-wing government. We should focus on getting ourselves organised, bringing the right together, working together to ensure that after the general election, we have a government that's actually going to start sorting this country out, reforming Britain for the better. If we get distracted with things like that, I think we're wasting time and money.
Mm-hmm. I want to confirm something for the record. There was a very young man on Twitter called Charlie Simpson, who I think on Saturday said you were going to defect. And your team denied it. Mm-hmm. And then when you did defect on Sunday, he said that he called it correct. What's the truth of that situation?
Okay. So the same Charlie Simpson did the same thing at party conference, announced that the next day I was going to do it. He just stabbed in the dark on that. He was completely wrong. There was no chance I had any intention of doing it then. He did the same on Saturday. But it wasn't correct because I hadn't spoken to Nigel. I was out campaigning with my own Conservative candidates.
Right.
So he just got lucky the next day. It all happened within the next 24 hours. It really started when Nigel phoned me and put it on the line.
Right.
He didn't demand. He said, look, it's up to you. Old boy, he said, it's up to you. But he said, if I was you, you've got to make a decision because after what's happened to Robert, you could be next. So if you want to come over, do it quickly because you may be chucked out yourself. Because I've been pretty much open on the record about being fairly supportive of Nigel. I've been asked, would he make a good Prime Minister? And I've said he would. Mm-hmm. Would you work with Reform? I said I would. So I suppose, and Robert said the same. Robert called me and said, look, if they've done it to me, they'll do it to you. So I thought, well, I'm going to just have to make a decision.
All right. I mean, I find it quite funny, the positioning of Robert Jenrick as the victim in all this.
You're walking in on a private argument here. Can I also ask, because there have been a lot of articles over the weekend by One Nation Tories saying, well, hey, we're getting our party back. I just wondered if you were conscious of that and if that informed your decision-making in any way, this sense that Kemi might be about to reposition the party back to the centre away from those Thatcherite ideals that you hold to.
I don't know what's in her mind. What I do think is that the One Nation wing of the party rode behind Kemi at the leadership election, and that's That's essentially why she won. I'm worried the Conservative Party could finish up like the French Republicans or the Danish Conservatives, where they become a small sort of centrist party, pro-business, free market, but actually not really representing the broad masses of the people. And that's where I fear we're heading. If you look at the old party of Jacques Chirac, they're nowhere to be seen anymore. They're very small. So I'm worried we're going to head in, or Conservative Party will head in that direction because they've lost the core vote.
Of course, some people say that by people like you defecting, you abandon the Tory party to that fate. Because once all the right, and I've thought about what Kemi did, and I feel it makes right-wingers feel unwelcome in the party in some ways. Well, if they all then leave, it is the party of Mel Stride and Kenneth Clarke because there are no right-wingers to push back against it.
But Tim, I tried very hard in the last 6 or 8 months on this very issue to talk about these core subjects, to make the Conservative Party almost more reform than reform. That's what I'd have done. Now, Robert Jenrick would have done that. That's the thing. He would have absolutely dealt with central office, changed the culture of the party, adopted much more radical conservative policies, very similar to reform. And he did on it straight away. We wouldn't have this long gap of waiting to talk about what policies we're going to adopt, trying to keep the party together, which has been a mistake.
Andrew Rosindell, hang on a minute. I love this rewriting of history. You're referring to the Robert Jenrick of the last 18 months, not the Robert Jenrick of his entire political career, where he was nowhere near you 25 years ago when you were in the right-wing trenches fighting for Brexit. This is preposterous, this idea. If we're talking about Thatcherites, Robert Jenrick was over in the One Nation camp, aligned with Camerooni politics, talking about fighting elections from the centre, voting for Remain, albeit he now says reluctantly, signing letters accusing those who voted for Brexit as betrayal. And now you're saying he's more Thatcherite than Kemi Badenoch, who's been aligned with your thinking all along. I mean, I'm sorry, but that's not quite accurate. He wasn't in the trenches with you.
It's absolutely true that during those years, although I always liked and admired Robert, his politics and mine were not aligned. Same with Liz Truss, actually. And I spoke to her recently, and some people change their views. Some people see, especially when they're ministers and they see the blob taking control, and this is what happened with Liz and Robert, they realise that something's not right, and they have a change of opinion. And I think in the case of Robert and of Liz, although I don't think the two of them get on actually.
Well, he's just denounced.
I know, but
he's denounced.
But the
Liz
one thing
Truss, said she should be thrown out.
Which tells us she'll never be welcome in the Reform Party.
But the one thing they've got in common is that I think they are genuine converts to the right side. Now, I've always been consistent in my views. You won't find me changing my views in my entire 25 years in the party. But with Robert, yes, he had to change it, but I honestly believe he's genuine. The energy of Robert and the determination to fight for the right things was truly inspiring to so many of our members. So he was pivotal. We needed to keep him on board, and they didn't. They were quite happy to throw him under a bus because I think it means that Kemi has no real chance of any serious opponent now. So Robert was the one person that could have potentially taken over as leader. If these local elections are a disaster in May, then Kemi's got problems. But now there's no Robert, well, who is there? So I think there's been politics being played as well.
Well, let's talk about one very important policy, because I'm afraid your defection has been slightly eclipsed by the war of words and tariffs over Greenland. Now, many in Reform have long been sympathetic towards Donald Trump and regarded him as a fellow traveller. How do you explain that position and that history if what Trump is now doing is not either in Britain's national interests or the interests of the Western alliance?
So, look, a lot of what Donald Trump has done, I admire. I think he's an incredible president, but he's not a politician. He doesn't think like a politician. So I know about Greenland. I've been to Greenland. I've been to Denmark many times. The Greenlandic people, it's a bit like Chagos Islands. I mean, they have self-determination, and you can't just walk in and take a country. It's hypocritical of Starmer. 1 minute he's giving away the Chagos Islands. Next minute he's defending Greenlandic sovereignty. So, yes, it is part of the Danish kingdom. It's not part of Denmark. It's part of the Danish kingdom with the Faroe Islands and Greenland. And they actually have MPs that sit in the Danish parliament, but they're not part of Denmark. So ultimately, it is Danish sovereign territory, and the people of Greenland are the people that must decide. Now, I think that if the President of the United States is concerned about security and defence and needs to have more bases in Greenland or arrangements with the Danish government to secure the Arctic, the far north, absolutely right. I mean, we're NATO allies. I don't really understand why America needs to own Greenland. And clearly, it isn't right that the United States should be trying to grab a part of Danish sovereign territory any more than it's right that we should be handing British sovereign territory over to Mauritius.
You're echoing Nigel Farage's statement about this only this morning outside Parliament. He's due to go out to Davos, the wisdom of which we could discuss, Andrew, as he has previously criticised that summit for being a kind of forum for jet-setting globalists. But never mind. Now, Keir Starmer might not go, which, as Tim has pointed out earlier on the Daily Tea, is curious, considering
out of character.
It's out of character of him to reject the air miles on this occasion. But if Nigel Farage ends up being in the same room as Donald Trump, as we think he may be, is it now incumbent on him to take the US president aside, have a quiet word and say, look, mate, this isn't going to wash?
Well, I think actually Nigel's already spoken to the President of the United States about the Chagos Islands. So it's great that Nigel has that close relationship. And Nigel's been very clear about this. This idea of America going on Greenland is absolutely wrong. And I hope that Nigel will express those views to the President if he meets him. But I also want him to raise Chagos again, because this, for me, this is humiliation for our country. You know, when we look back that we're giving away British territories, such an important, vital for security, trashing the sovereignty of those islands and denying self-determination. So I hope Nigel, and this is his great ability to talk to people, and I hope that he can talk to Donald Trump and make him see sense on both those issues.
Well, is he objective enough? Because he does trade a lot on this relationship with his bestie across the pond.
Well, who knows? I've never been in private conversations with Nigel and the President of the United States, but Nigel, I think, has the interests of Britain at heart. And on Chagos, he's told me, he's spoken to the President. Greenland, obviously, it's not under our domain, but clearly, if the United States invaded Greenland, and I don't see why they would need to. I mean, there's not that many people there, and what are they going to occupy? So it seems a bit fruitless to me, when I'm sure Denmark would agree to any sensible security plans that the President wants to put forward. I hope that Nigel has the opportunity to talk to him.
What we're going to see in the next few months now is a big debate about which party is the real small c Conservative Party. And I'm sure the Tories will now say, well, Andrew, you're selling yourself as a true blue Thatcherite, but you've just joined a party which wants to nationalise steel and scrap the two-child benefit cap. How do you, as a small stater, respond to those charges?
Well, I think Nigel's a small stater too. I think he believes in Thatcherite economic policies because they generate the wealth that pays for everything. If you don't have free market, low taxes and a small state, as we're seeing now, because we've got high taxes, big debts and a big state, it doesn't work. So we've got no money to pay for anything. We're in huge debts. So every policy is going to be taken on its own. I don't believe in nationalisation. In the end, it doesn't work. There are times when governments do have to take control of things temporarily if there is a security reason or an economic matter that needs to be looked at. So, you can't be dogmatic on everything.
Reforms talked about nationalising water.
Okay, so we have problems with some of our water companies. I'm not in favour of nationalisation. I'm always going to be for privatisation, but sometimes the national interest, the government has to deal with issues as and when they arrive. Now, as far as the two-child benefit cap is concerned, I'm not convinced of that. What I'm convinced of is that we need to look at policies that are family-friendly, and we need to use the tax system to encourage more British families to have British children, for families to be successful in this country, where the population is an issue. Look at what Viktor Orban has been doing in Hungary, promoting family values, Hungarian culture. I think we need a bit of that here too. I'm not keen on the welfare state being overbloated as it is. But I think Nigel's policy is slightly different. He doesn't support what the Labour government's done. I think it's only British families
That's right.
and working families. So it's a bit nuanced. It's not quite as black and white as people say. So I think we need to look at things individually and make sensible decisions in the national interest.
If she were alive today, who do you think Margaret Thatcher would vote for?
I think there wouldn't be a Reform Party or a wishy-washy Conservative Party. There'd be one strong, true Conservative Party if she was around. And that's the problem. We haven't had a Margaret Thatcher figure in the Conservative Party ever since she left. And so the Conservative Party has gradually drifted back into this mushy, centrist, all things to all men. It doesn't work. It's not why people want to vote Conservative. And certainly at Romford, my constituents, they've been very loyal Conservative voters. Even the last election, I held it against the trend. It should have been a Labour seat. They stuck with me, but I've always been a Conservative the way they see it, and that's, I think, why I've held the seat. But I can't justify this mush anymore. I want the Conservative Party to be properly Conservative. That's not going to happen.
To do things like leave the ECHR, reverse net zero,
absolutely,
ban the ban on petrols and diesels, all of which they've committed to, just to bring the conversation full circle.
Yes.
Because you talked earlier, Andrew, about trying to get some kind of alliance together of the right. Square this circle, because as Tim's pointed out, what you could do, Reform could pick off all of the righties in the Conservatives. There is this attempt to annihilate the Conservatives completely, but they're actually polling higher than Labour at the moment. So what you could succeed in doing is be left with this kind of like wishy-washy, yellows in disguise, rump of Conservatives that still poll at 15%. Then you're in trouble, because Reform cannot get the vote share it needs to have a stonking majority to carry out the legislative change that you are calling for, right? Then they're left with a rump of Tories they cannot do a deal with. So therefore, this could all be rather self-defeating. Further down the line, don't you agree that it's all very well what both of the leaders are saying about we're not having any pacts? If the alternative is yet more Starmer or, God forbid, worse for the right, Badenoch and Farage will have to do a deal. Do you think?
I think so, in the end. But I think it's on the basis that Nigel's going to be Prime Minister, and that's the issue.
Sure.
So, Kemi, I've tried to talk to Kemi myself, and I've tried to say to lots of people, Robert and others, over many months now, that if the price is, speaking as I was a Conservative MP, if the price is for Nigel to be Prime Minister, but for us to have an alliance to rescue the country, then maybe that's our duty at this stage. And I try to argue that.
So you better not destroy the Conservatives then, as both Farage and Jenrick have pledged, because then you won't have anyone to confidence and supply you.
You make a good point, but the issue is basically with Kemi. Kemi and the Conservative Party are constantly treating Reform and Nigel as enemies.
Well, vice versa. This is what the right find frustrating. I'm only trying to articulate the frustrations of the right.
I know. But
we should see each other as potential allies.
But people have long had a frustration that MPs stay in parties they don't believe in out of partisan loyalty, and they say things they don't really think. And then when a politician finally says, I can't do it anymore, I'm going to join the people who I actually agree with, everyone comes down on them as a turncoat.
I'm not coming down on Andrew.
No, I know you're not. I know. But
I'm merely saying this whole confected, from Farage's point of view, we want to destroy the Conservatives. From Kemi's point of view, we're not entertaining any deals with Reform. What? You're all saying that you want to act in the national interest, and you will let a socialist progressive alliance take over the country in 3 to 4 years' time. Are you all completely bonkers?
Look,
quite possibly.
Maybe.
It's an issue that has to be addressed, but any kind of type of deal now is going to be on the basis that Nigel Farage will be our Prime Minister.
Okay. Andrew Rosindell, really great to speak to you. Thank you so much for coming into the Daily Tea. I think giving us your first sort of proper broadcast interview. Is that right?
We appreciate it. Thank you.
I think Chris Hope has beaten you too.
Oh, GB News!
Heavens sake.
How damn them and damn Chopper.
Yeah.
But it's great to see you. Thank you.
Thank you.
If you're enjoying our journalism, why not sign up to From the Editor, our free email newsletter? Start your day with the latest news and opinion, plus our bite-sized puzzles. Scan the QR code to sign up free today.